Everybody, my name is Gemski. I'm the founder and CEO at TEKGEM. So we're an industrial cybersecurity company, and we help to protect companies in the process industry, in the main who are producing energy from oil, gas. We're more often getting involved in clean energy, renewables. We've got some of our guys going out to the Middle East actually next month to work on one of the biggest solar farms in Jordan, which will be really interesting for us. We're getting involved in some of the big wind offshore farms as well, in terms of helping to secure that critical infrastructure. A lot of our customers are actually classed by the UK government as providing essential services to the country, so critical national infrastructure. As well as that, a lot of them, due to the nature of the process that they're running, fall under the control of major accident hazard regulations, COMA regs, and as a result, the UK government back in 2017 brought industrial cybersecurity under those regulations, under the control of major accident hazard regs and the NIS regulations. So what that means is that a lot of our customers not only have to operate safely as a business and make money, but they've also got to demonstrate to the competent authorities that they're doing everything they possibly can to reduce the risk of a cybersecurity incident, either causing a major accident hazard or stopping them operating, provide those essential services to the country. A couple of examples of the types of customers we work with. We've got a customer who operate a gas terminal on Teesside. They've got an undersea pipeline that goes out 250 miles into the North Sea. That in turn connects into approximately 40 offshore platforms. Platforms drill the seabed, extract the natural gas. It goes back under over the pipeline. The terminal processes that gas, and it goes into the national transmission system, the gas national transmission system, so it can heat and power our homes. That particular customer supplies up to 25% of the UK's domestic gas supply, hence being critical national infrastructure. So where we sit, rather than helping customers to protect their what we call information technology, we help to protect what we call operational technology. So whereby IT, information technology, are the computer systems and devices that store, retrieve and process information, so things like your smartphones, your laptops, your smart TVs, your email systems. Operational technology is a relatively new term over the last 5 years, I would say, are the systems that essentially computer-based systems that operate generally in real time or near real time, that control physical processes and machinery, essentially, so industrial control systems, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. And the issue is that a lot of the modern industrial control systems actually use what we call common off-the-shelf software, commercially off-the-shelf software that's purchasable, and as a result of control system vendors utilising what we call COTS systems, they're also vulnerable to a lot of the same threats that can impact IT systems. However, the impact and consequence of such a cybersecurity incident, could potentially cause major accident hazards if there's any safety systems that could be impacted by them. So that's where we sit, and that's where we work. Any questions? So, as a company, actually going back a little bit, I used to work on the Wilton site. Ryan, from my days, I worked at SAIC for about 10 years. Got involved with the cracker down at Olefins, and I was brought in when SABIC purchased the cracker from Huntsman. I ended up getting involved in control systems and automation systems back in probably 20 years ago now. I'm showing my age. So for the last 20 years I've been involved in helping to protect industrial control systems. Out of that, one thing led to another, and I was able to form TEKGEM, and we've grown from just being myself in 2017 to a team of just under 50, and we're based here in the Northeast, and we really do, we're proud to be based in the Northeast, proud of our heritage, where we come from, and we've launched an apprenticeship academy that we're very, very proud of. It's a degree level apprenticeship whereby we take on the best and the brightest students from the Northeast, and we bring them in, give them full-time permanent positions with TEKGEM, and put them through a full degree over 3.5 years. That's been a great success for us. Sam is now one of our senior engineers. He was one of our very first apprentices, and we've seen great things from that. So we're investing heavily in our apprenticeship program, heavily in bringing through the next generation of engineers to help protect our way of life. Last year we took on 10 apprentices, and again the year before we took on 10. So we really are growing our own next generation of engineers through that program, which we're very, very proud of. Our products and services, so we help our customers with what we call governance, risk and compliance. That's essentially going into our customers, helping them to understand what programmable assets they've got, programmable devices they've got, controlling their plants and equipment, because you can't protect if you don't know what you've got. We then carry out risk and vulnerability assessments to identify any vulnerabilities and threats that could exploit those vulnerabilities and the impact and consequence of those risks that we've identified. We then typically, once we've carried out those risk assessments for our customers, they typically get a bunch of findings and recommendations or actions, and then we can take our customers on a program to actually mitigate those risks by implementing what we call technical countermeasures. Essentially that's putting in tools, technologies and processes to help our customers manage that cybersecurity risk. I think it's very important to say as well that cybersecurity is not about software or platforms or flashing lights. It really is about people first and foremost. If people are familiar with process safety or functional safety, computers don't go wrong. It's the people who are programming the computers or people who are operating the computers that have that. So we call it human vulnerability, and that's first and foremost. Embedding that cybersecurity culture across the organisation is absolutely imperative to protecting and operating safely. We also help our customers to plan and respond to cybersecurity incidents, and that's absolutely key, because it's not a matter of if you're going to get attacked, it's a matter of when you're going to get attacked. And Sam, he's got a great presentation. You'll see that this evening. Technical project engineering, we provide managed services over the long term, so that's whereby we become part of our customer's team, providing that specialist cybersecurity embedded within their company, because a lot of people, it is a specialist and expertise area, so we kind of bridge that gap and help our customers to have that expertise where they necessarily wouldn't have it. And we've also built a couple of cybersecurity software platforms that actually help to protect our customers. TEKGEM Unity, it's an asset management and risk management platform that helps our customers automatically identify all of their assets, identify vulnerabilities, and ultimately manage their cybersecurity risk. And it helps us as part of that program of continuously monitoring and protecting our customers' critical infrastructure. TEKGEM Field is a secure kiosk with integrated renewable media gateway and secure file transfer platform. This we designed specifically to protect against the threat from USB and removable media devices. There was a really interesting news article a couple of years ago whereby a senior control systems engineer working at Sellafield was seen by the security guards who were monitoring the CCTV, leaving work on an evening and dropping something as she was getting into a car. The security guards went to retrieve that, because what they thought was lost property. And anyway, when they picked it up, they identified it as being a USB device. So they then handed it over to their IT teams. When the IT teams actually plugged that information, the USB in to analyse what was on it, it actually contained all of the control system project files for the whole nuclear power station. Unfortunately for that particular senior control system engineer who worked there the majority of her career for 20 years, she was sacked from that role because that was top secret, sensitive information, and if it was to get into the wrong hands, was a national security threat. That's just one example.
I was going to suggest as well, just because I have it in my bag, this, from the other kind of angle of USB devices, obviously technology is getting so much smaller nowadays that itself, it's in a clear case to kind of show you what's inside, and I'll pass it around for you to look at. That is effectively a computer, so you can plug that into something, connect to that wirelessly as if you connect to the internet, and send data over it.
So essentially we built TEKGEM Shield to protect against the bad stuff getting into your critical networks, and sensitive data leaving it, either by a theft or data loss. That's me. Any questions?
What are the threats you're protecting people against? Is it external threats? Is it, you know, the Russians trying to?
Yes.
Or is it a 14-year-old in his bedroom? You know?
Okay, so yes to both of those, and the geopolitical instability of the world at the minute. We are on increased threat levels, so we work a lot with our customers who are regulated. So I don't know if you're familiar with DESNZ, the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. It used to be called BEARS back in the day. They've actually sent out notifications to all of our customers who are classed as operators of essential services or producing energy regarding that cybersecurity threat, and providing guidance on what they have to do legally in terms of being prepared for and protecting themselves against those threats from those bad actor states, let's call them, without putting any kind of countries in that, calling them out.
The only one I know is what was it, FUXNET, the Israeli one where they were.
Yes. Yeah. So
that's sort of that.
So FUXNET, that was a state-sponsored attack.
There's a slide on it if you want me to pull it up.
I'll let Sam move on to that one. But actually, it's not just about state-sponsored threats or what we call them external actors, people who you don't know. We see a lot of internal threat actors.
A pissed off employee who can do you a lot of harm.
Pissed off employee, right? You don't get the promotion that you want, that you've been working your arse off for the last 10 years. And Joe Bloggs, who's come in, he's been here 6 months, you know, and people are, we're emotional animals, and actually we see a lot of insider threats. But it's not only insider threats whereby people are causing cybersecurity incidents maliciously. There's also genuine people who are doing a genuine job but are making mistakes, misconfigurations. Those are also classed as cybersecurity incidents. Yeah, so accidents happen, people are malicious, but it's not all of the time. So when we talk about cybersecurity, it's that whole gamut of all of those different threat actors, internal, external, accidental, malicious, and we see it all. But we do see it more often than not that the simpler, disgruntled internal employees, or the mistakes happening much more frequently than the state actors. But when the state actors do get in, then the impact is generally, it can be a lot worse. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to our senior cybersecurity engineer, Sam Longstaff, who's going to present tonight.
Perfect. Cheers, Ian. So, you mentioned Stuxnet. You'll notice a thing with the name, that it kind of rhymes, and it's probably a good opportunity for me to say that there will be bad language in the slide pack. So that is to bear in mind. Obviously Stuxnet, we'll get onto it in the slide, impacting the Iranians, potentially geopolitics involved there, but this is all around something called FUXNet. Not only is the bad language there, that is a fountain of
yeah. If I was a Ukrainian, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be finding a way to get to the Russian infrastructure.
You must have seen this back. You must have seen this back. So a quick one, Ian introduced the business himself. Quick, who am I? So my name's Sam Longstaff. I'm a senior cybersecurity engineer at TEKGEM. 8 years now, Ian, it's been. So yes, I was one of the first 2 apprentices in the business. And now I'm in a senior position with a team who sit with me, so that's pretty cool. I specialise in the GRC side specifically, so that governance, risk and compliance, getting onto customer sites, helping them, guide them through that process. But I also am quite involved still in the technical improvements that come after that. A lot of incident response work, and again, what we do is focus to the industrial control system environment, the OT that we call it. And yeah, I've worked with numerous sites in the UK, Ireland and globally as well. So a lot of experience in quite little time. We're very busy. So we talked about Stuxnet, we made a comment on that before, and we talked about cybersecurity threats. So I want to do a little bit on the threat landscape, and that starts with a bit of a timeline. So when you think about cybersecurity, it's always emails, phishing, don't click links, USBs, valid in this case, yes, absolutely. You might think of a guy with his hood up in the basement, typing away, matrix, all that good stuff. In what we do, the threat landscape is quite different, and since about 2008 onwards, there's been a big shift, all starting with Stuxnet in 2010. A couple of other examples, there's one called Dooku, which followed Stuxnet, very similar sort of attack. You had the New York Dam being impacted in 2013. Black Energy 3 is another one, impacting energy infrastructure in Europe. You've got Dragonfly, the Triton and Trisis. Has anyone worked on triconic safety systems in the past before? There was a big flaw in those. So that was a big problem, probably globally. TSMC, and more recently Florida Water Treatment and the Colonial Pipeline, which made the news.
That on the news.
Yeah, that one really did make the news. So those are the big ones really that have happened recently. Obviously Stuxnet being the one I want to focus on, the one that started it all, and the one that rhymes with the one I'm looking at today. So that's always handy. So, what is Stuxnet? How many people around the table have heard of Stuxnet before? Okay, by the hands. Cool. That's good. That's good. So this was technically a piece of malware, and the geopolitics behind it is believed to be Israeli and American kind of joint forces to slow down the Iranians in their development of uranium enrichment. So this attacked the Natanz uranium enrichment plant. It was a very, very specialised, very specific piece of malware, or worm, which actually made it into that plant through USB drives. So USBs being dropped, someone's picked up and gone, oh great, and thrown it in the system. Completely bypassing any what we call air gaps. So that's where your system's just completely isolated, completely disconnected from the outside world. What it did was quite clever, and this is why it was very specialised. It caused the centrifuges in that specific system, controlled by specific Siemens PLCs, to spin at irregular rates, speeding up, slowing down, causing vibrations, which caused them to wear out a lot sooner than they were supposed to. Whilst that was happening, it was telling the control systems and the operators, everything's healthy, everything's great. Very, very clever. So that's kind of what started it all, and that's where a lot of what we talk about the threat landscape and realistic attacks stem from. The other angle to look at it from, which has kept us very busy recently, geopolitics. I don't think I even need to ask the room about geopolitics when there's this man going around, and to an extent these guys as well. Did anyone watch that interview? Possibly one of the most painful things I've ever watched. Horrendous. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. I'm going to make no more comments.
Yeah, you've got to watch the full. You've got to watch the full, not just the editing bit.
And the person who should be maybe down here, JD Vance. Yeah, no comments either. Not for today. But yes, geopolitics is a huge player when it comes to what we do. The Russians, the Ukrainians, what we're talking about today, and we'll go into, is actually a slightly different angle. It might surprise you a little bit. There's always two sides in a war, so we'll get into that. But you've also got the likes of China, North Korea, very prominent as well, more in the financial sector. So the North Koreans make a lot of their money, for their economy through cryptocurrency schemes.
That's the Chinese, isn't it? Chinese
Yeah.
vendors have been banned in effect because
Yes.
no one's sure what's embedded in their devices.
Yeah. I was recently reviewing an intended design for a new plant that's being built locally, and one of the main vendors is Chinese. So when I requested all of their technical documentation to review for cybersecurity, it was in Chinese. It's the hard side of the job that sometimes I think Ian maybe doesn't see. So geopolitics is a huge influence in what we do. There it is. I pulled this map up because it's really interesting actually when I started digging into this of how closely it relates to what's happening on the ground. Obviously I'm zooming in and I'm focusing in on the Ukrainian war at the moment. But what people don't see on the news is, you see every day that a missile strikes hit Kiev, a missile strikes hit here, there's been a ground invasion here. What you don't see is actually, usually right before these attacks, the cyber attacks that happen. This one at the top is a very good example. So a Russian threat actor compromised the media company in Kiev, literally days before a missile then struck that building. And as you see, kind of as a follow-up of that, while they're raining missiles down, they stole loads of data. So there's a lot more going on than you actually can see. So a couple of examples there around a Russian group moving laterally on a network. So that's where they've compromised that network. They're inside the network and they're moving around, looking for things, stealing things, causing disruption a day before they get occupied. So the Russians are already in there before they're physically there. If that makes sense. So I just thought this was a really, really good map to kind of show that point of actually cyber warfare is going on all the time. You just can't see it.
Quick one on that. 4 hours before Russia invaded Ukraine, there was a massive worldwide cyber attack on a company called Viasat. Now Viasat operate a global network of satellites, and they provide satellite communications to a lot of militaries, namely the Ukrainian military being one of them. So during that attack, all satellite communications from Viasat's global network were disrupted. And you might have seen on the news at the time of the invasion, Elon Musk sending a bunch of Starlink satellite receivers over to the Ukraine, as trying to help them out to recover from this.
They're probably claiming that they were loaned out as well.
And anyway, the UK government have published press releases that Russia were to blame for that cyber attack. But one of the side effects or other impacts, that global network is also used commercially, and there were wind farms in Central Europe producing approximately 10 gigawatts worth of energy via wind farms. It also knocked those wind farms out because the wind farms were using their modems and the satellite network to
locking onto that Viasat network.
Using that, so not only did they interrupt the military comms, they knocked out 12,000 wind turbines and 2,000 wind farms, producing energy for up to 7.5 million people across Europe. So it just kind of goes to show you that they are absolutely intertwined. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, there's a good page. I said I think at the start as well that I'll send this back out if anyone's interested in reading some of the articles that are related to this and seeing some of the sources. Yeah, some really interesting stuff. A lot going on behind the scenes, which I think sometimes us as security professionals, when people look at what we do, this is kind of what's going on in the background, what we're keeping an eye on. So, a lot of headlines, obviously, geopolitics, Russia attacking Ukraine. A lot of examples I've just given there, all Russia attacking Ukraine on the cyber front. But you can reverse these headlines. It's a war. There is things going on the other way. So, skyscraper high sewage roads in Moscow. Nice. Puts a smile on some faces, I think. What else have we got? Oh, a burst pipe sprays filthy water all over Moscow suburb. Nice. Great. Not quite the same as a missile hitting a hospital. But
it's like the North Koreans sending balloons of garbage over the
yeah.
border, don't they?
Yeah, you get what I'm in here. Well, that one as well. I like that one. That was from the Express, so I'm not surprised by that. So yeah, what I'm getting at here is that it's a war, things are happening the other way, and one of the big things that happened in Russia recently is a whole lot of this. I'm hoping this is going to play. Nope, it's not going to play. Always is the case with videos. Let's see. There you go. A lot of this made the news. Yeah, not very
More
well.
like it. Lovely aerosols.
Yes, so that happened. Now, I ask, is that a coincidence or is that a cyber attack? I know what Russia's stance on this was. They said, yes, it's just legacy pipework, legacy infrastructure, that's what it is. When I see this, that's me. I don't know if anyone's watched Always Sunny in Philadelphia. As soon as I see these sorts of things, I'm like, I've got to figure it out. Not only did I figure it out, but obviously other cybersecurity professionals in our space have as well. So this is where we enter a group called Blackjack. And you mentioned that when you think cybersecurity, you think of fellows like this, sitting hidden away, doing this. Usually the mum shouting them to tea or something like that. So Blackjack are a hacking group. They're believed to be affiliated with the Ukrainian intelligence services. And over the last few years, during the war, they have been constantly causing problems with the Russians, basically. Attacking them on the cyber front. In 2024, they actually put out a big release that they had basically attacked the sewage system in Moscow, which seemed to align with some headlines. More specifically, they had actually attacked a company called Moscollector, who are responsible for the construction and monitoring of underground water, sewage and comms infrastructure. So that is Blackjack. That group claimed that against Moscollector, they gained initial access into their infrastructure, into their environment. They claimed that they compromised 87,000 sensors. That's a lot. They deployed something called the FUXNET malware, which they developed themselves, and they did something called endless fuzzing to cause a whole heap of disruption. So where did this start? We'll work kind of through some of the attack, what happened. So they initially took over Moscollector's Facebook page. You can see, I don't speak Russian. That probably means what is over there. Effectively, that's the things you usually see on TV. Cyber attacks happen, someone's defaced something. So obviously their social media accounts got attacked, which was a sign something was going on. From there, they actually then claimed to have had access to that business's systems and accounts since June 2023. So about 6 to 12 months they've been in that system. Ian mentioned earlier different types of threats that exist. One of them we call in the cyber world an advanced persistent threat. That is a threat actor who sits in that network, waiting, seeing what's going on. Similar to what you saw the Russians doing on that map that I showed. And we can prove that they did this because they published screenshots from that Russian IT system. So at the moment we're still talking about the information technology world. I could explain it. I'm not going to because I actually don't know what it says. But you can see the date there, 2023. So that gives us some validation that yes, they got in. Within that environment and that internal infrastructure, I don't know how many people around the table have actually been involved with some of the IT infrastructure side. I can recognise things such as VMware, file storage servers, any computational resources, SIM control for mobile devices. They also gain access to all the employee information from this business. And also what I recently found out when pulling this together was they disabled all the access to the Moscollector office building so that when shit literally hit the fan, they all turned up to work to deal with it and they couldn't get in the building. Nice double whammy, I like it. That actually has a very, especially with us and some of our customers, there's actually a lot to be said about this. One customer I specifically work with, their card access system for their site, their fuel terminal, is built into their control system. So if their control system was ever compromised, the card access system is also compromised. So there's a problem. So that it's a good one. It's a good one. Again, all these were claims, but screenshots were provided. Has anyone ever seen inside of something called VMware before? No? Yeah? A few yeses, a few no's. It's effectively a server which hosts other, what we call virtual servers, virtual machines. So all of this company's IT infrastructure is probably hosted on here. You can see some of the machines down the side, you can see IP addresses, you can see obviously they don't really take care of the environment because they've got default passwords that are expiring. This is a theme, by the way, that you'll see. So there's that one. What else have we got? File storage. Again, I wish I could tell you what those files were. Blackjack probably could. There's a scan in there. And things like this. So accounts. Things that you use every day that you don't think of. Compromised, in clear text, unencrypted. They pulled them out. Suddenly they've got everyone's account for that business. Dangerous. The big one. As part of this infrastructure that they broke into, they gained access to their monitoring and control system. Remember the 87,000 sensors? Well, they're all mapped within here. Take note of this location, this page as well. But this is effectively giving them the keys to the castle to jump further, cause more problems. That's just another page of one of the viewers that they broke into. You can see different devices, you've got converters, even cameras on these systems. I know one of the locations I found on Google Maps, this petrol station on Junction, which shows a sensor within their control system. You can go on Google Maps, you can view the inside of the petrol station on Street View, and you can see the camera. So it's very, very interesting to do that actually. So loads of stuff. You know, this compromise went very far. That's only the IT world though. That usually can be recovered pretty easily if you can get in the building. 87,000 sensors. Now that is a big claim. Very, very big claim. As part of this, Blackjack didn't say what those sensors were. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the typical electrical sensors, yeah? I mean, they're just some common examples. But when we did some digging, there are lots of clues as to what those sensors are. So this is a screenshot from one of the connections during the cyber attack that happened on Loss Collector. And this line here gives you the support information for one of the devices that they were trying to attack. Using that, we can go to that website. I wouldn't recommend it because it's a .ru domain, which is a Russian site. I tried earlier. Sorry, Ian. It's blocked, so our firewalls are doing their job. Effectively, SBK are just a company who manufacture sensors, sensor gateways, electronic parts for this type of utility infrastructure. They are solely a Russian company and they only sell their equipment to Russian companies' utilities. Those sorts of things, effectively. Don't know how many of those people are familiar with, depending on what areas you've been involved with. All sorts, really. So that's SBK. So Moss Collector use a lot of this equipment, basically all of this equipment. We're going to get a bit technical, so bear with me. A lot of this you might go, what on earth? And then you might also look at it in Russian and think, okay, really, what's going on? These are JSON files, these just hold configuration information. When you dig into some of these files that were leaked as part of this attack, we can start to identify NBSPs in the beautiful Russian Cyrillic text and TMSPs. So we know that the company SBK make these. We know what the devices are. Leads us to these. These are the devices that were attacked by Blackjack. A data transmission module and a telemetry module. So the NBSP is something that is designed to basically interface both through Ethernet, RS-45 serial, RS-232 serial, and CAN, which is vehicle control systems, I think. The TMSP is a similar device, but that one has 3 and 4G connectivity, so wireless, utilizing SIM and mobile data networks. If you remember earlier, they got the SIM information for this company as part of the IT attack. So that's a couple of the types of devices that these guys were targeting. There was a bunch of others as well. Again, these files give a lot away. So you have the PSVs, which are the sensor gateways I talked about, 424 of those were found in the configuration files. TMSBs, 93, and you can see different workstations. There's always one in every plant we work on. Even for the Russians, there's always one Windows XP machine which just won't go away. Always there. Other devices, that doesn't equal 87,000, but we'll get into how the infrastructure's set up in a minute anyway. But these are the gateways, so you have to think these gateways potentially have thousands each, or hundreds of sensors each hanging off them. You hit them, you're going to cause problems. XP. I actually love it. My first ever, I'm going to show, in my youth, my first ever laptop I owned was a Windows XP laptop. So it was my favourite experience ever. So Moss Collector, we've learned a little bit about the makeup of the sensor gateways, who they get their equipment from. We can start building a picture of their control system. And what we'll do is we'll kind of work backwards to it. So you've got the physical sensors, you've got some gateways. They're going to need to talk somehow back to the IT infrastructure, probably through a 3G router, which we do confirm. And then remember that control system. That's kind of your last step. So we'll start bottom up, and then we'll work top down for the attack. So we already mentioned the sensors, gas analyzers, fire monitors, all of which are provided by this SBK company. These are effectively, yeah, I've gone over them already. But they need to connect to the brain control system, as most people in here will be aware of, and they use something called NBus or RS-485 specifically on these pieces of equipment. If we keep working backwards, the sensor gateways, well, we've already looked at those. Those are these TMSB devices. So your sensors connect to the TMSBs, they read the sensor data, and they send it wirelessly to the monitoring system, the control system. And we've mentioned two variants already. 3G router, very common, we find them all the time still. We do site surveys, we'll open a cab, we'll see a SIM card with a pushed out SIM card slot, and we're like, right, where is it then? Usually they don't know. Specifically, in this example of this attack, they use something called an IRZ3G router, which is used for connecting the sensor gateways to the control system, as I mentioned. That is the exact model they used. Note the two SIM cards that we talked about and the RS-232 connections as well. And then, obviously, that's the data into the monitoring system. Okay, cool. Now, the bit that I like, that gets me excited, that gets me looking like Charlie from Always Sunny, is the attack. We've already learned that as part of their IT compromise, that the monitoring system is already gone. We've got it. Oh, Blackjack has got it. Wasn't me, I can't read Russian. Next target in that chain is that router. Has anyone ever worked with routers, switches, network infrastructure before? You can manage it through different methods, different protocols. One of them is via something called SSH. That's just a screenshot of what it looks like on the left of connecting to it. To connect to these things, you usually need a username and a password. In this case, Blackjack were able to get credentials correct, get into that device. We actually still don't know how those were obtained, but if you remember earlier, all of the passwords and usernames that were dumped, we suspect it was probably in that list. They've dried them, they've broke into that router, gone. 3G router. Come on, next step in the attack, the sensor gateway. We know what those are. Again, we can connect to these sensor gateways because they're a network device. They sit on the network, you connect them through SSH or through web. I'm going to leave this on the screen for a second to see if you can understand why the attackers found it so easy to do this next step. Shout up if you see it. Me and you might already know. Yeah. Any ideas? I'll make it a bit bigger.
Password, yeah.
Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah. Suppose
So
it does.
someone, and when Ian talked about the human factor, someone decided that they should, one, keep the password default, and two, leave it in the connection so that when anyone ever tries to connect, it's given to you. Bit of a freebie, I think, for the Ukrainians, this one. And when you look at Russia's military competence, yeah, we've would probably say the same thing, and maybe about their administrators. And guess what? That's the sensor gateway gone. Physical sensors. How do you attack a physical sensor? It's quite tricky, and that's what we're going to get into in even more technical detail. And this is where the specific malware called FUXNET was developed. It was developed to attack, one, the sensor gateways, and also the sensor specifically. Similar to how Stuxnet was carefully crafted and shaped to target a very specific plant. So, the new ICS malware, no one really heard about this in the news. Its goal was to destroy the sensors. Blackjack claimed that it is Stuxnet on steroids when you look at the scale of it. It's probably not far off. Let's have a look. So several parts to this. Quite technical, as I said. So be prepared for some code. There's a reason I left uni and stopped studying computer programming, and it's probably this. So, one, they need to deploy to these devices. So the attackers had a list of all those sensor gateways in the infrastructure. Remember, they got the control system with the map. You can see all the devices, all the IP addresses. Got it. Which is what this is. So all the devices, you've got addresses, you've got device lists and locations. There's a place in Russia called Zelensky, which is quite unusual. So all the devices, easy, they've got it all already. So the first step for the attackers is to go, okay, we know where everything is. We've created this malware. Nice, we like it. How do we distribute it? We're going through the commands, and Gary, I learnt this word earlier, and I can't remember it. This is just a location in Russia. So that's an example of a command of them pushing out the malware to a certain sensor gateway somewhere in Russia. What did I... Gemski, there you go, that's where it is. On the IP address, and you'll notice a port number, so you can't just send data to a device. You need something called a port. People who've worked with maybe Modbus TCP will be aware of what network and application ports are. The 65,000 ports, you don't really guess that. Well, when they broke into the infrastructure, they found the tool that managed the devices, and as you can see up there, there's your port, there's your protocol to manage these on. Another easy win. They do make it look easy. So, they know how to deploy to these devices now. The next thing sounds scary. I love cybersecurity because we give things silly names, but the Reaper routine. So once that piece of software is running on one of those gateways, this malware creates new processes. So just a bit of info, these gateways run on Linux, very common. And it starts by remounting the file system, giving it write access, and then it goes through that system, deletes specific files, directories, basically trashes the machine, right? Say someone hacked into your PC and just started breaking everything. That's what this is doing. You can see this from the code. Again, digging into the code. It's actually not too complex, this one, but you've got things like remounting, removing files, which contains all of the credentials and passwords. You've got killing processes, deleting roots, deleting IP addresses, trashing them. So that's stage one of this malware. Let's deploy to the sensors and let's just trash them. The next piece, NAND chips. It's not food, it's not something that's on here. Does anyone know what NAND is? Yeah? Okay. Fantastic. Basically, it's one of them. What's a NAND chip? It's storage, it's memory. It's non-volatile memory used on flash devices, cameras, things like that. So, you can destroy NAND chips just through the power of code. Yeah, it's not sci-fi. You wouldn't think that you would be able to physically destroy them, but you can. To do that, and NAND chips are very vulnerable to this, you can do something called a bit flip, which constantly writes and rewrites memory to the point where the device just gets corrupted. So again, these guys are just getting on these devices and just trashing them. I love it. Yeah, since the gateways use that, and as I say, they are vulnerable to it, so you have things called NAND write cycles. You can only do so many. Constantly rewriting the memory causes it to malfunction and become inoperable. So you've trashed the system software, you've trashed the memory physically. Surely you can't go too much further. By the way, this bit flipping, it sounds really complex. I want you to do 5 lines of code on these devices. That's all it took. The UB or UB volume. So the UB volume, UB stands for unsorted block images, is basically the flash memory file system. Okay? Think of a computer and think where the computer boots from. Its boot drive. You can think of it that way in this case. But it's where the operating system is stored from on the sensors and gateway devices. So yes, they went another step further and attacked this. This one's actually really interesting. It's not something I knew you could do. And again, get into the kind of code and the way that memory works. So they wrote a piece of code which told the UB that, you know, I'm about to write some memory. Prepare yourself. The code then says, I'm about to write this much data. I think it's X number of bytes. I'm about to write 10 bytes. The program's like, yes, good, I'm ready. It then writes X minus 1. The system goes, whoa, hangs indefinitely. Very vulnerable, very interesting though. And the final one.
Is that specific to that type of kit? Because isn't there any sort of error correction in the transfer normally?
In that kit, I do think it was just a vulnerability. I haven't seen that on modern European or US kit.
Because it'll be waiting for the last byte. It'll just wait forever till it gets the last message.
Yeah, yeah. Hence the indefinite hanging basically as well. The last piece of it was, okay, we've really killed the sensors. Not sensors, sorry, the sensor gateways. We can actually target the sensors as well. I asked the question, how do you attack a sensor? Well, you can't really do it directly, it's not on the network. But it is talking, it is sending signals, it is sending data. So what Blackjack did in their software, is they attacked something called the M-bus. So M-bus in SBK's equipment stands for meter bus, it's not Modbus. But actually, when you look at it, it's quite similar. It's a signaling protocol for meter and sensor devices, the TEKGEM, and you can actually see the different serial connections. So I talked about R232, 485, and basically those connections. So, being Russian, I guess, the Russians are good at building things to a standard, which is like the European standards, but not actually the European standards. So effectively they brought that protocol to align with how the West do it, but it is a standard that is used mainly in utilities as we're looking at. It's a 2-wire bus, it's asynchronous, and they communicate over different baud rates on that connection, so send receive. The master node, as we showed you, connects to various slave nodes. In this case, those slaves will be the sensors out in the field. The master will be the gateway. And by taking control of the gateway, as we said earlier, by using that as a jumping point before destroying it, because most of them are destroyed, then you can actually send data over that link. And I drew a picture because it makes it easy to explain. As I say, in this case, sensor gateway, your physical sensors. Over here is your router and your control system. So they employ 2 techniques in the code, this malware. They wrote some code which sends random data to and from the devices. It's something we typically call fuzzing in the cyber world, where you just throw different data at something to see what its response is. It might break it, it might respond weirdly, it might trigger an unknown vulnerability, we don't know. So the way that works is it takes that frame of data that it's about to send, and they basically take that, use every iteration of it, fire it at the devices, see what happens. Red dots. Maybe it'll kill a few of them. Might not kill them all. The other angle they took actually was, okay, we've done it randomly. Why don't we try and adhere to that protocol that's been used? So they then wrote code to generate realistic traffic that is valid to that protocol, which could kill everything. A little bit of code here again on how that was done. At the top, you've got their technically second method that I called out, but that is the code to send data that looks like real traffic to see what these devices will do, or to just overload them and shut them down. The bottom one is just on the random front. So what we've seen there is they've really gone to town on this control system, all the way through IT, routers, down to the gateways, and then the network the sensors run on themselves. Bit of a summary, because that was a lot of technical information. As I say, they developed and deployed specific malware, similar to Stuxnet, even with a similar name to Stuxnet, that targeted the gateways and deleted those file systems on there. It then disabled any remote access, so bang, we've hit your sensors. Oh, we'll remote on and reboot them. No, you can't. Remote access is gone. Removed the routing and the networking from them. Then we've gone further and rewrote the flash memory, so the physical stuff, all the way down to the NAND chips and then the boot volumes. Basically, gone.
How long did that take to happen?
So they were in their network at the IT level for possibly a year beforehand. The actual development of the malware is unknown because they'll have done that secretly and almost prepared it ready to go. I suspect that once they pressed go, it's quite quick. If they prep the malware, if they understand the network, they know all their targets, press the red button and off you go. So I suspect it was quite quick, definitely.
And the control system was never getting any information back to say that there's something awry.
It will have, but it was also compromised at the same time, and no staff would get in the building. So there was that, but yes, all those sensors in that environment, you know, on that map I showed you before, would have basically shown offline, which is a lot of stuff. Estimated, and these are coming from various sources. These groups, whether they're on the good side, the bad side, whichever side, they never really publish too much. They estimate around 1,700 fried sensor gateways across most collectors and state. Thousands of decommissioned network devices. If you remember, this started in the IT, so they also caused havoc in the IT world. Email systems, credential systems, financial. Caused carnage, wiping databases, servers. 87,000 sensors supposedly left in an unknown condition. They can't see them on the network. That's potentially 87,000 sensors that they would have to go and check manually as well, because they can't remote to them, because the gateways are gone. Personal data leaked, as we say, you know, how many people, and please be honest, in their work life have used the same password as what they do at home? I'm seeing people nod but no hands, so yeah. All those accounts, just think about how many, I think I showed you on one of the screenshots. Most of those will probably use the same or similar passwords to the ones they use at home. So actually, personal data impact as well. There's a lot of sites I still go on, even on the control system, where someone has a notepad file on the desktop setting passwords. There was even one site where I asked if one of the guys could let me into one of their systems to do part of our check. He opened the drawer, he pulled out a little book. It had all the passwords for the control system. It had his banking details. It had his mortgage account information. I could tell you what bank he's with for his mortgage. The whole lot. So, good practices. 30 terabytes stored data loss. That's a lot. A lot of data. And apparently, as per when I originally wrote this last year, it's had an update since. Most collectors still don't really know what the state of that system is in. A mess. So, I wanted to show you this. This was the screenshot that I picked out from it earlier. You'll have seen it. I mentioned Zelensky in the different locations. But this one has a specific highlight on Nicolino. You can go on Google Maps, you can find this location. It's there. That's what it looks like. Looks like a pleasant area, actually. Potentially based on what you've seen from the potential impacts, which may align, they may not. Whoever's in that building might have had a pretty shit day. You know what else? I asked if it's a coincidence. Don't believe in coincidences. Not in the cybersecurity world.
Enjoy your food.
Enjoy your food if you want. Yeah. No, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to thank TEKGEM for hosting this evening's visit. It's been very informative. It was good that Ian gave the intro, and we see a successful North East company. This is good. And Sam for giving us the presentation, caused quite a bit of discussion, etc., which shows that it was certainly of interest to our visitors tonight. So, in the usual way, please thank